Hello and welcome to the morning sports briefing here on Saturday, the 4th of July. Yes, that's right, Independence Day over there in the USA. In our news today, Blake Green and Beal to leave Warriors. Bowden heads to Japan. Mystics stay dominant, and Red Bulls complain. So yes, where are we? Your best way to start the day, up to speed with all the important sports news here on New Zealand Sports Radio. And let's jump into football news to start off with. And Man City thrashed champions Liverpool 4-0 over there. And Liverpool taking some flack for perhaps taking it a bit easy now that they've got the title all wrapped up. Also, question marks as to how their selections will be for the rest of the season. Will they be putting out full-strength sides, or will they be giving opportunities to other players? So all of that kicking off over there in England. Over in the Belarusian Premier League, and boy, oh boy, Slavia beat Sluts 3-1. And my team, Sluts, there has slid all the way down to 12th after being at top of the table. A good win for Slavia, who climb up to 9th. And Smolovici get a good draw with Dynamo Brest 3-3. Smolovici second from bottom in the table. That is now their fifth draw. Their fifth draw of the season, and they're slowly creeping up on Gorodeya and Minsk as possibly getting out of that relegation zone. A poor result for Dynamo Brest, you have to say. And I'll hand you over now to Stephen, who'll take us through our birthday.
Yes, good morning, Paul, and good morning, everybody tuning into New Zealand Sport Radio this morning. We've got a bumper edition of Rugby League coming up this morning, but before we do, we'll head into our birthdays. In birthdays today, a former New Zealand Grand Prix motorcycle racer from rugby playing to officiating, and finally from the Junior Warriors to the Tonga national rugby team. That's where we start. Viliami Lolohea, born this day, the 4th of July 1993, is a New Zealand rugby union player who plays in the wing position. He currently plays for Tonga. Upon leaving school, Lolohea entered into the New Zealand Warriors Rugby League junior side, where he stayed there until 2014, when he was signed for Tasman as well as the Crusaders in Super Rugby. Unfortunately, injury ended his season before it began. He had to start his climb once more, all over again, by playing a season in the Nelson Bays area, where he made the Tasman Marco squad in 2015. He ended up making 8 appearances that particular season and scoring 3 tries. Staying with the oval ball code, Jamie Nutbrown, born this day, the 4th of July 1981, in Christchurch, is a New Zealand rugby referee and former provincial rugby player. Nutbrown, who played halfback, played ITM Cup rugby for both Canterbury and Bay of Plenty, as well as representing both the Crusaders and the Chiefs in Super Rugby. Jamie Nutbrown officiated in MRL Rugby League, Major League Rugby this year, before obviously COVID suspended all rugby in the USA. And finally, a absolute motorcycle legend, Graham Crosby, born this day, the 4th of July 1955, is a former professional Grand Prix motorcycle road racer. And obviously he was born in New Zealand. I've got to check out my scripts these days. A versatile rider, Crosby was equally capable on either 4-stroke superbike races or 2-stroke Grand Prix races. He holds the distinction of being the only person to have won the Daytona 200, the Imola 200, the Suzuki 8 Hours Endurance Race, and the Isle of Man Tourist Trophy races. That's our birthday recipients out there for the sport today. I'm sure anybody else who's having a birthday today, a very happy birthday. Back to you, Paul.
Thank you very much, Stephen. And we'll stay on motorsport, actually. Over in F1, so not motorbikes, but 4 wheels rather than 2 wheels. And Red Bull have lodged an official protest against Mercedes' revolutionary steering system. They say it constitutes a movable aerodynamic device, and that it is an adjustment to the suspension while the car is in motion. So yes, it's going to be interesting to see the success of or not of this protest because Hamilton dominated the Austrian Grand Prix practice this weekend, which takes place this weekend in his McLaren. So yes, so whilst they've actually got themselves out on the track, it does not look. It looks like they are not they're already squabbling off the track too. Moving on to New Zealand rugby, and Darren Impey has given an interview talking about the future of Super Rugby, and that they're keeping themselves open to all sorts of options. He says that a 5-team league just is not sustainable. But he says that fans have shown that what they want are derbies, and they knew that already. Apparently, did New Zealand rugby, but they say yes, it's been reiterated to them. They've talking about adding extra Super Rugby sides. He says, look, that would water down the high performance side of things. And obviously, 5 teams has been very good for the All Blacks as well. But a change of tone, definitely, about the possibility of having a Trans-Tasman competition. All the sort of positive news or positive talk around it previously has come from the other side of the ditch. But now it sounds like the New Zealand side are also so that he says that we're open to working with Rugby Australia. So yes, a softening of the stance. Previously New Zealand said that they will definitely include South Africa. So it looks like a softening of that position. Beauden Barrett is heading to Japan now. Initial reports said that it was for 2 years, but no, it's not, folks. It is only for 6 months. It is just for the 2021 Super Rugby season. He'll be back for the All Blacks games next year. This was the Blues say, look, this was planned for. They knew they're expecting him to take his sabbatical next year. Whilst a lot of reports have come out crying about going, oh, he's off, especially from the Northern Hemisphere. Look, this is the same thing that Whitelock and Brady Retallick have done. It's just basically a year later. So no big scare or nothing too unexpected there, really. Geordie Barrett is back in the lineup for the Hurricanes. So he is back now, and all the All Blacks that the Hurricanes have on the roster are available for that game. Opposite them, for the Chiefs, Anton Brown is unfortunately out due to concussion. So that will be a big loss for the Chiefs. That game is on Sunday. Tonight we have the Highlanders versus the Crusaders, followed by the Brumbies taking on the Rebels over in Super Rugby AU that kicked off last night. The Reds beat the Waratahs 31-26 in a close one over there. It was only a 3-point game leading up to the siren, but a kick or a penalty on 80 minutes opened that up to a 6-point lead. So the Reds have started the Super Rugby AU with a good win over there. Now I'm going to hand you back to Stephen, who will take us through our bumper NRL update.
Thank you, Paul, and good morning again, everybody. Yes, it is a bumper morning in league news this morning. The Raiders hang on to beat the Dragons. The Eels are far too good for the North Queensland Cowboys. We have Blake Green and it looks like Jared Beale will be leaving the Warriors at the end of the season. And we have some breaking news regarding the Warriors and in and around COVID, but we'll get to those stories shortly. We'll start with New Zealand Warriors owner Mark Robinson has revealed that 5/8 Blake Green will lead an exodus of players managed by controversial NRL agent Isaac Moses after the sacking of coach Steve Kearney, who is also managed by Moses, was suddenly shown the door by the Warriors 2 weeks ago. Speaking to New Zealand's One News, Robinson said that Green would be leaving the struggling club after the 2020 NRL season. There's a few of the other boys going. Robinson said Blake Green and Gerard Beale, and a few of them are going, and we're going to be really, really cautious of how we approach any other players. Moses is a controversial figure in the rugby league world, having drawn criticism over his player management style from NRL analyst Phil Gould and current Canberra Raiders coach Ricky Stewart in recent weeks, following the league's investigation into him. Moses has appealed the NRL's decision to have him deregistered, alleging he convinced former client and rugby league player Tim Manor to provide false evidence to mislead the competition's integrity unit. We'll follow that story with interest. And in breaking news overnight, the hapless New Zealand Warriors have suffered another setback with a COVID-19 scare sweeping through the camp this week. Several players reported cold and flu-like symptoms in the lead up to that's actually tonight's crunch game against fellow strugglers, the Brisbane Broncos. In recent days, the players were isolated and tested as per NRL protocol, and fortunately came back clear, but the distraction was the last thing the Warriors needed in these troubled times. Adding to their woes, the Warriors go into the camp without inspirational skipper Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, who has been rubbed out by the NRL judiciary. The club has persuaded 3 players who wanted to return home to be with their families to remain in Australia until after the game against the Cronulla Sharks on July 19. If the NRL cannot find a way to reunite the players with their families before then, they will leave the camp and cross the ditch, adding to the team's problems. The Warriors were thumped by 50 points by the Storm in interim coaches Todd Payton's first game in charge last weekend, and need to make a statement against the out-of-form Broncos this evening. That's why I'm going to pick them by 12 points and under. Am I making the right decision, or are they going to play the Broncos back into form? Speaking about things that are happening on the field, our first game yesterday evening was the Raiders v. the Dragons. The Raiders have put their back-to-back losses behind them to defeat the Dragons 22-16. Despite a late surge from the Dragons, it was the Raiders' red-hot start to the match that got them over the line in their first game at Geo Stadium since round 1. That's also where the Brumbies play their rugby. Canberra coach Ricky Stewart made a shock last-minute change, dropping starting prop Josh Papali'i and starting lock Joe Tapini to the bench, but it didn't cause any issues for the team as they opened up the scoring early with back-to-back tries. Off-contract winger Nick Kotrick showed his worth as he scored the opener off a perfectly timed double pump pass from Shans Nicole Klokstad. Not long after, Canberra's other winger Bailey Simonson outleapt Mikaele Ravalawa to score their second off a pinpoint kick from George Williams. A try assist wasn't enough for the English halfback, who then scored a try of his own when he stepped St. George Illawarra's Corbin Sims just before halftime, and this Englishman has got some pace. Stewart's plans of bringing Papali'i on later in the match were thrown out the window when he was forced to bring the big man on early to replace Sia Soliolo, who was sent to hospital with a facial fracture. Wow. The St. George Dragons did come alive in the last corner with the live wire fullback Mick Duffy touching down twice in the 60th minute and right on full time, as well as Zach Lomax in the 65th minute. But it was a case of too little, too late. That final score again. Canberra Raiders 22, St. George Dragons 16. And in our final game last night between the Eels and the Cowboys, Eels skipper Clint Gutherson put on an absolute masterclass in Parramatta's 42-4 victory over the Cowboys to celebrate his 100th NRL game in style. The Eels may have been missing their most important playmaker in Mitchell Moses. I don't think he's related to the agent, but you could have been fooled for thinking he was out there as Gutherson took over the playmaking duties. The Parramatta fullback ran for 222 metres and had 6 tackle busts, an offload, a line break, 3 line break assists, and 3 try assists in a real captain's knock. It certainly is. Gutherson was responsible for 2 carbon copy try assists for Micah Seville, one in each half that saw him cut out defenders with pinpoint passes that hit his winger flush on the chest. The first came in the 22nd minute when he put Seva over in the corner before he did his best to reenact it with another stellar assist in the 50th minute. The second assist was just as impressive. It started from an offload from Walker Blake after the initial break was made by Gutherson, straight into the backfield, and then a nice play from Reid Mahoney to that man Gutherson, again across the face of Cowboys defender Isan Masters. So that's just getting that pass on the outside of the rushing midfielder. It was a thing of beauty. The other standout was 110 kg powerhouse winger Micah Seville, who finished with 4 tries against the Cowboys. Now this man is very, very impressive. Out of Fiji, hadn't played a lot of rugby league, obviously rugby back in the islands, but he is making a name for himself in the NRL, and he can thank his skipper once again for putting those tries on a plate. Gutherson also kicked 7 goals from 8 attempts, with many of them from the sideline, to prove he can fill in for Moses in every facet. That final score again, Parramatta Eels 42, North Queensland Cowboys 4. How impressive is it to have? They often say if you're picking a rugby league side or a rugby side, pick a goal kicker and then pick another goal kicker. Pays to have a couple of backups. And finally, in games today, the Gold Coast Titans take on the Cronulla Sharks at Suncorp Stadium. Kickoff is at 5 p.m. New Zealand time. And of course, the game we're most interested in, the New Zealand Warriors host the Brisbane Broncos at Central Coast Stadium in Gosford. Kickoff time is at 7:30 p.m. I'm picking the Warriors. Go chuck some money at it. And in the late game, the West Tigers play the Penrith Panthers at Bankwest Stadium. That is at 9:35 p.m. Remembering, those are New Zealand times. I will be back tomorrow with more league news. But hey, get out there today. Go and support your grassroots footy. In fact, it doesn't have to be footy, can be netball, any sport indeed. I'm going to try and get out this afternoon. I'm looking to head out to watch Pakuranga play Ponsonby at Bell Park later today. Catch up with our main Dwayne with a little bit of luck, Paul.
Yes, absolutely. And unfortunately, I've got a bit of a head cold, so I will be staying home and being part of the team of 5 million, making sure we don't spread any diseases around. Otherwise, I would have been getting out some grassroots sport as well. So yes, but yeah, big game for the Warriors this evening, isn't it? Against one of the struggling teams. They really do have to get the win this evening with all the controversy that's been going on. You think, yeah, it's going to be a big weekend for them. You were talking about kickers. The Reds also had 2 kickers last night and had to change their kicker. So you're right, having 2 kickers is vitally important.
Oh, huge! It's huge, Paul. It's just one of those things, and I think it gives the team a lot of confidence. To know that you can actually, when there are points on offer, and if you're number 1 kicker down, your number two guy steps in. I just also want to highlight this Fijian winger Sevu Micah. He is a absolute genuine superstar, Paul, because he's a big man as well. So, you could arguably say maybe that's one that's got away from Fiji rugby.
Oh, well, yes. And with the money on offer as a professional in the NRL, you can understand why that has happened. Moving on to other sports then. And in the ANZ Premiership, the Mystics beat the Tactics 47-42 to go back top of the table and to keep the pressure on the Central Pulse. The Pulse, though, have played 2 less games, and they will have the chance to retake that top spot over the next 2 days. As tonight, the Pulse will play the Steel at Auckland Netball Centre in St John's, so you can get down there, folks, and watch some top-class sport. On Sunday, the Pulse will have to back up again and play the Magic. Before the Magic back up on Monday to play the Stars. So 3 more games this weekend in the ANZ Netball. In some sad news, and UFC lightweight champion Khabib Nurmagomedov's father has passed away. Abdul Manap has died after coronavirus complications. He was flown up to Moscow in May because of that, and with his heart condition, unfortunately, he has passed away. Not only does he coach the UFC lightweight champion, but he coaches other fighters, including Ismail Makhachev, as well. So our thoughts with the family there over in UFC. You are listening to New Zealand Sports Radio, and yes, there was no NZNBL action last night, but there is tonight. The Franklin Bulls will take on the Manawatu Jets. The Franklin Bulls really in some form, having beat the Nuggets and also the Giants already this week. The Manawatu Jets also got that win over the previously unbeaten Canterbury Rams. So you've got to say that's a big win there. Also a big game there between two form teams there. And two out-of-form teams will follow that up. The Canterbury Rams versus the Otago Nuggets, two teams that went undefeated at the beginning of this season, but now have both picked up a couple of losses recently. So both looking to bounce back from that and stop that poor form there. Canterbury Rams are still at the top of the table, though, but that could change actually could it change this evening? Yeah, it could change this evening if the Franklin Bulls get the win. Very tight there in the Sal's NBL. So again, if you want to catch some top flight sport, you can get tickets for that, or you can watch that on TV this evening. Don't forget, folks, you can listen to us on the move as well as watch us live on Facebook. Just search for New Zealand Sports Radio on your favourite podcatcher, be that iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or Acast. You have now started the day the best way, up to date with all the important sports news. Don't forget, we'll be here at 7 a.m. 7 days a week, bringing you the latest, or the most important, sports news. Oh, and a bit of tennis news. I'm going to hand you back to Stephen for that. We're very late on the wires. Nearly hit the broadcast, but he just got in there.
It is, Paul. As you know, it's one sport I think everybody's missing out there is the tennis at the moment. So it'll be interesting to see how things play out moving forward. Obviously, a bit of negative publicity in and around Novak Djokovic, who tried to get something up and running. But an interesting article that I cottoned onto, I was reading about last night, is from former French tennis player Florent Serra, and he's pretty much he's analysed Andy Roddick, how he's suffered a lot from Federer's class in his career. But the full article is Roger Federer, Rafael Nadal and Novak Djokovic are all-time leaders in the ranking of Grand Slams, having won 20, 19 and 17 respectively. Their dominance can be summarised by the fact that starting from the Australian Open in 2005, only one happened at once. Final of Slam could not count the presence of at least one of the big three. So what this article is basically saying, these three have dominated the major opens so much, it's probably been at the detriment to somebody like Andy Roddick, who's basically suffered a heck of a lot during his career. The Swiss phenomenon has prevented A-Rod from winning numerous titles, especially at Wimbledon and the US Open. Andy Roddick was not only the victim of the emergence of Roger Federer, but also general slowdown in surfaces. Florent Serra said he was powerful and a complete player, a little weaker on the backhand and side anyway, who with quality of service should have won Wimbledon and the US Open several times had it not slowed down. So, it's quite interesting. Definitely those three have always been the ones that have always come through in the really big tournaments. I know we've got Dave Worsley, who tunes into our show, who's a tennis expert, somebody I've listened to over the years on another radio station. We'd probably have to get him in to talk a little bit of tennis, Paul, at some stage.
Yeah, another player also that had lots of promise, Andy Murray, another guy who's joined that era, who hasn't picked up many titles, but also injury has held him back as well. So yes, those three really dominated, as you say, the recent professional tennis. So we'd love to have him on. If he's listening to it this morning, then do get in touch.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. Andy Murray's always been an interesting one. When he loses, he's a Scotsman. When he wins, he's from the UK, something like that.
When he wins British, he loses his Scottish. From English papers. So yes, folks, have a wonderful day. Stay warm, stay wrapped up, stay well. But if you don't have a cold like me, do get out and support your grassroots sports this weekend.